Today, we're taking an in-depth look at a government agency making headlines for historic workforce growth. As impressive as this is, there could be some major challenges on the horizon. This is all happening within the IRS. Let's dive into the numbers, the challenges, and possible outcomes as the IRS wages a war on attrition as it tries to modernize its workforce. The IRS is celebrating a historic achievement. Its workforce has surpassed 100,000 employees for the first time in nearly 30 years. This marks a significant rebound from previous years where the IRS was dealing with budget cuts. Their staffing was reduced to a point that wasn't even seen since the 1970s. Last year, we hit 100,000 at the IRS. The year before that, it was 90,000. In 2024, the IRS hired around 20,000 employees, and they plan to increase their workforce to 102,000 by 2029. This means the IRS is way ahead of its goal. They weren't even anticipating hitting 100,000 employees until 2027. And you've probably seen it. If you're looking at the virtual hiring events, they're doing one pretty much every week or every couple of weeks. And if you're not getting that email, that's because you're not signed up to the newsletter down below. Go ahead and sign up to the free newsletter. Despite the rise in hiring, the IRS is facing a critical challenge. 2 words: employee attrition. According to its own report, over 9,000 employees left their agency just in 2024 alone. This isn't just with the IRS. The entire federal government experiences attrition just like any employer would. The rate right now that people are leaving the government, the attrition rate is at 6%. The IRS is much higher. It's at 15%. There's also a large amount of the workforce that's eligible for retirement. So the IRS is bracing for even more departures. Currently, 63% of IRS employees are eligible for retirement within the next 6 years. This doesn't mean that they will retire. It just means that they're eligible. And we all probably know of the one federal worker that sticks around into their 70s and everyone's scratching their head like, why is Marvin still here? Marvin's basically the historian of this agency. Why doesn't he just retire? Well, some people, that's their sense of purpose. You need a sense of purpose in order to keep living. And once you stop working, if you don't find another direction, then you lose that sense of purpose. And that could be detrimental to your health. Another layer to this problem is the budget of the IRS. Their budget was $80 billion, and there was a $20 billion cut, additional cut, equaling a total of $40 billion lost within the agency. And they could lose further money with the new administration. Looking at the budget for fiscal year 2025, 2026, there's no appetite to grow this agency. The IRS commissioner warned that further cuts could significantly hamper the agency's ability to maintain its workforce. These reductions, they're not just on paper, they're going to have real-world ramifications. Their ability to ensure fair tax enforcement, and they're going to face stiffer competition for talent. Because the private sector, they want the same individuals the IRS is targeting for a lot of their financial positions. The private sector wants those individuals, especially if they're considered high talent. So the competition will be greater. Look at this. Federal employees with bachelor degrees earn 10% less than private sector counterparts, and the salary gap widens to about 30% for professionals with advanced degrees. And it's not just the private sector. The IRS also competes with the FDIC, the SEC, and the Treasury, which offers higher salaries than the general schedule. So if you're not aware of all the pay bands, you have the IRS, which is typically on the GS pay band. That only goes up to about $195,000 a year right now. You have the FDIC, who will pay, if you have the right level of talent, you have the right type of experience, they'll pay over $200,000. They'll pay $225,000, $230,000. Same thing with the SEC. They're going to pay a lot more. So usually in situations about employment, where do I want to give my time? Where do I want to grow a career? You're going to go, who compensates you the best? Who's going to pay you the best? Do you want to work for the IRS for, let's say, $160,000, $170,000? Or would you much rather work for the FDIC for $225,000? Well, I know the answer to that question for most people. Also, what we're probably looking at with the new administration, we're looking at efforts to reduce the total size of government, not just the government, but specifically the IRS. There is no love for the IRS when it comes to Republican congressmen. They're going to want to reduce the size. Any proposed cuts will face resistance from Democrats in Congress, but it wouldn't be a surprise that the overall budget for the IRS will continue to see a decline. The IRS can't do much about that challenge, but they can do something about the other challenges. When it comes to attracting talent, they need to use non-monetary ways to signal to the employee that they have their best interests at mind. What does that mean? A non-monetary way, a way that isn't communicated with a higher salary. What do people value more than salary, especially as they advance in age? What they value is time and flexibility. So if we could see the IRS perhaps leaning more into telework, leaning more into remote work, those factors can resonate with employees that are looking for purpose over paychecks. Another critical challenge is training. The IRS has a long time before they're able to fully train an individual to work in their federal agency. For some positions, that means it can take up to 3 years before they consider that person fully trained. And you understand the nature in the federal workforce or any kind of workforce, really, people are not staying that long. People are looking at 2, 3, 4 years and they're jumping. They're jumping in order to get their promotion. They're jumping for higher pay. They're jumping for flexibility. So by the time you fully train an individual to work in your agency, to be an effective cog within that machine, the cog is jumping out. They're going somewhere else. And this is costing institutional knowledge to be depleted within that organization. If you have a certain amount of turnover, you're losing valuable knowledge. The overall time to hire has increased 9%, rising from 85 days in 2023 to 93 days in 2024. Now, that's a lot better than the average 100 days that the entire federal government saw in 2024. And 100 days is just the average because there are a lot of positions that take way longer than that. It is not uncommon to wait 4 to 6 to 7 months at times in order for your security clearance to go through, in order for the entire process to conclude with you starting your first day, which is called EOD, entrance on duty. Now, nearly 40% of the IRS, they currently work in taxpayer services, and that attrition rate's even higher than the rest of the IRS. They've seen between 16 and 36% attrition in the past 2 years. So given these challenges, the IRS has to rethink its strategy to have a sustainable workforce. And that comes down to some of the things that we were mentioning. Non-monetary benefits, more telework, more remote work, reducing the time to hire. People are not waiting around for over 3 months waiting to see if they're able to work in your agency. You have to reduce that. Boosting the employee training programs, providing more effective training. It shouldn't take 3 years. Let's try to get that number down to 18 months or 12 months at the most. By focusing on those strategies, the IRS can ensure that its workforce stays strong and capable in the years ahead. And you would think by everything that I just mentioned that maybe the IRS doesn't have an appetite to hire right now in this climate. Everyone's asking, should I be even applying for a government job in 2025? Well, let's jump on usajobs.gov and you'll see that they're clearly still hiring. Not only are they hiring, but they're hiring by the hundreds. Here, you can see there's almost 400 open jobs on usajobs.gov. A lot of these are in the 0500 job series, which covers finance, accounting, and budget. Makes a lot of sense due to the nature of the agency. You will see 0510, which is an accountant. Now, what most people do is they look at the 0500, you hear finance and accounting, you automatically assume that maybe you need a CPA. Maybe you need a master's in accounting or a master's in finance or something like that. And a lot of these job series, they don't require it. There's only a couple of job series like 0510 that actually require a CPA or a bachelor's with so many semester hours in accounting. If you look at 0501, which is usually a financial specialist, that typically does not have a hard educational requirement, and especially 0560, which is a budget analyst. That also does not have a hard educational requirement, meaning that you only need to have experience. You do not necessarily need to have any type of degree whatsoever. If you are interested in a federal government job, doesn't have to be with the IRS, any one of the 400 agencies that currently exist. If you're interested in that, then you should know the process from start to finish, from when you set up your account on usajobs.gov, when you upload your resume, and also when do you receive your job offer. If you're interested in that process, I want you to check this video out next. If you would like to download a federal resume example, check out the links down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.